Good evening, everybody. I'd like to introduce myself to everyone. My name is Zahra Al-Sanadi, Senior Respiratory Therapy student at Misr University for Sciences and Technology, Egypt. In this presentation, I'd like to talk about the most important thing in respiratory therapy, and you must all be familiar with what I'm gonna talk about today, the basic knowledge in mechanical ventilation. ببدأ موضوع اليوم بذكر تاريخ جهاز التنفس الصناعي ومن أول شخص فكر وتحدث عن هذا الجهاز العظيم اللي عالج ملايين المرضى. أول من نتحدث عن جهاز التنفس الصناعي هو دكتور جالن اللي موجودة صورته هني. كان يجرب ينفخ في رئة الحيوانات الميتة ولاحظ أن القصبة الهوائية مالتهم تنتفخ، فقام العالم أندرياس ووصف تركيبة جهاز التنفس الصناعي للحيوانات، وبعدها جاء العالم جورج بو وصمم هذا الجهاز وركبه على بعضه يعني عشان يعالج الكلاب اللي فيهم مرض في التنفس. وفي أربعينيات القرن الماضي صادهم وباء شلل الأطفال، فتم استيحاء فكرة جهاز التنفس الصناعي لمعالجة البشر من جهاز التنفس الصناعي اللي قام جورج بو بتصميمه. ومثل ما تشوفون هذا هو الجهاز، جهاز الآيرون لانج أو جهاز الرئة الحديدية. مثل ما تشوفون إنه يكون جسم الإنسان داخل هذا الجهاز الطويل وبس راسه يكون برا، فيه نيشي مطاطي يلصق في رقبة الشخص عشان يمنع خروج الهواء، وفي هذا الجهاز مثل المضخة الميكانيكية اللي تنفخ الهواء وتضخه عشان تزود المرضى بالأكسجين. وهذا الجهاز أيضا يسمونه negative pressure ventilation. ولكن تطور الطب وتطورت التكنولوجيا وتطور العلم وما قاموا يستخدمون هذا الجهاز الضخم، وقاموا يستخدمون جهاز positive pressure ventilation، وهو هذا الميكانيكال ventilation، جهاز التنفس الصناعي اللي كلكم تعرفونه واللي الحين ما يخلق أي مستشفى منه خصوصا بعد الجائحة. وهني تكمن أهمية جهاز التنفس الصناعي، لأنه يوفر أفضل فرصة للبقاء على قيد الحياة بالنسبة للمرضى اللي يعانون من مضاعفات خطيرة بعد ما دمر الفيروس جزء كبير من رئتهم. So what's the mechanical ventilation? Mechanical ventilation is a machine that helps the patient to breathe when they are having any problem, such as surgical problem, post-surgical problem, or patient who cannot breathe on their own due to critical illness. What's the ventilation? Ventilation is simply the movement of air into the lungs and out of the lungs. Inspiration and expiration. In inspiration, you will notice that the external intercostal muscles contracts and moves to up, and the diaphragm will move down. It will contract and will move down. Try to inspire. And the expiration, you will notice that the external intercostal muscles will relax and it will move to down, as well as the diaphragm. Diaphragm will relax and it will move to up. The respiration. What's the respiration? Respiration is exchange of the oxygen and the carbon dioxide between the organism and the environment. It divided into external respiration and internal respiration. External respiration is the exchange of the oxygen and the carbon dioxide between the alveoli and the pulmonary capillaries. Here is the alveolus and here is the capillaries. Exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. What about the internal respiration? The internal respiration involves the movement of oxygen from the systemic blood into the cells. From the systemic blood into the cells, as here you can see. Now we will talk about the modes. Mode is collection of breaths. Here are the modes and it depends on the patient effort. We have CMV اللي هو continuous mandatory ventilation. هو إذا كان المريض ما يقدر يبدأ النفس ولا ينهي، جهاز التنفس الصناعي بيعطي النفس. وعندنا ال ACM اللي هو Assisted Control Mode. Patient will trigger and initiate a breath and mechanical ventilation will help him or her to cycle it. يعني إن المريض بيبدأ النفس وجهاز التنفس الصناعي بيساعده. Assisted يعني إن المريض يبدأ مثلا النفس أو ينهي، والcontrolled إن مع مساعدة من جهاز التنفس الصناعي وهو يجمع بين النفسين. We have ال SIMV mode اللي هو Synchronized Intermittent Mandatory Ventilation اللي هو يجمع 3 أنفاس مع بعض. الcontrolled والassisted والspontaneously يعني ممكن إن المريض يتنفس نفس كامل بروحه، ممكن إنه يبدي النفس وجهاز التنفس الصناعي يكمله، أو ممكن إن جهاز التنفس الصناعي يعطي النفس كله. وفي عندنا السباب هي حق المريض اللي يتنفس طبيعي النفس كامل، ولكن يستخدم السباب عشان to improve the oxygenation مثلا، أو إنه عشان يخلي اللنج مفتوحة. وعندنا السبورتد بعد يجمع أكثر من نفس في وقت واحد. As we said in the previous slides, modes are combination of breaths. Here we will talk about the breath in details. Breath is a combination of phases. So let's talk about the types of a breath. We have 2 types of breaths, the mechanical breath and the spontaneously breath. Mechanical breath divided into controlled and assisted breath. Controlled breath, the machine will start the breath and the machine will end the breath. As here we can see, machine started the breath and it ended. Machine started and it ended. Okay, let's talk about the assisted. Assisted, patient starts the breath. Here we will notice that there is a negative pressure and the machine ends the breath. It's the same with the controlled. Same. Let's talk about the spontaneously breaths. There are 2 types, or divided into 2. The supported breath and the spontaneous breath. Supported, patient will start the breath and it will end it. As here we can see, it will start it either by pressure or by flow. We will see negative pressure, or it will end it by flow. Here's a negative pressure. Okay, what about the spontaneously? We will notice that there is negative breath. It started the breath and it ended by flow. There is no negative pressure because it ended by a flow. As I said, mode is a combination of breaths. A breath is a combination by phases. Now I'm gonna talk about the phases. It will be easy to you because I already talked about it. Trigger. trigger is the initiation of a breath. It is this how to start a breath. As we see here, letter A. Either it be by patient, negative pressure, or by machine. By patient, maybe by pressure or a flow. We will see a negative pressure or flow by the sensitivity, or machine we can set a time, for example 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds. And the control or limit. It regulates gas flow during the inspiration, either by volume or pressure. And the volume control or volume limit, volume will be constant. It will be the target, the limit. We will set the tidal volume, and the pressure will be variable. And the pressure limit, pressure will be constant and the volume will be variable, and the target will be pressure limit, and we will set the pressure. As here we see, here is the control or the limit. And letter A, as we said, it's the trigger. Cycle is the end of the breath, either it be by the patient or by the machine. By the patient, by flow, or machine by time, as we said, we set a time, or by pressure. Letter D is the expiration, and it's a passive process. Here we will talk about some basic waveform readings. It's so simple. Graphics. For example, here is the PIP or peak inspiratory pressure. This is the inspiration. The peak is here. It's the point of maximal airway pressure. It's called peak inspiratory pressure or PIP. Positive end expiratory pressure. It is the pressure that maintained in the airway at the end of expiration. We can see here is the expiration, and here is the PIP. This is the thing that keep lungs open at the end of expiration. Now I'd like to summarize this presentation. I talked about history, definition of mechanical ventilation, respiration, modes, breathes, phases, and basic waveform readings. And that brings us to the end of this presentation. I really appreciate your attention. Thanks so much for your interest, and I hope you like it.